The Siege of Jerusalem 1187. The final ordeal of 20,000 crusaders, what could drive a city barely 1 square kilometer in size to become the graveyard of tens of thousands? An area smaller than a single neighborhood in New York or Paris, yet for thousands of years humanity has spilled blood upon it, piling body upon body, all to claim it. Jerusalem, where every stone, every wall carries a meaning far beyond territory. It is faith, honor, and the survival of entire civilizations. In 1187, after the bloody Battle of Hattin on July 4th, the Crusader army was crushed. Thousands of knights were killed or captured. Beneath the blazing desert sun, the holy crosses were cast down into the dust, and Jerusalem, the very heart of the war, became the ultimate prize. And advancing upon it was none other than Saladin, the commander revered by both East and West, leading a vast and unstoppable army. After the disaster at Hattin, the Battle of Hattin was like a sandstorm that swept away the Crusaders' strength. In a single day, more than 20,000 Christian soldiers were surrounded, so desperate for water that they drank dew from the grass, only to be crushed by Muslim cavalry. Nearly the entire elite of the Crusader Knights was taken prisoner, including King Guy de Lusignan, the ruler of Jerusalem himself, who fell straight into Saladin's hands. Jerusalem at that moment was like a lion stripped of its fangs and claws, reduced to nothing but a bare skeleton. The city's defenses now consisted of scattered soldiers, a handful of surviving knights, and mostly civilians with trembling hands clutching spears and makeshift weapons. What had once been an army that dominated the battlefield was now only a shadow of itself, forced to watch the enemy advance as a suffocating fear hung over the skies. Balance of forces. When Saladin's army arrived, Jerusalem stood as if before a divine storm. He brought with him 20,000 to 30,000 men, a force 4 to 5 times larger than the city's defenders. Thousands of armored cavalry thundered forward like dark waves across the desert. Archers drew their bows to unleash a sea of arrows, and towering above all were the massive trebuchets, the ultimate siege weapons of the Middle Ages. Inside the city, by contrast, only 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers remained, commanded by Balian of Ibelin. To put it simply, it was like setting a small village against the might of an entire city's army. If Saladin's forces were a volcano ready to erupt, then Jerusalem was no more than a flickering oil lamp in a raging storm, struggling to resist the fury about to descend upon it. The Reign of Fire and Stone. On September 20th, 1187, Saladin launched his assault. He struck from the north, where Jerusalem's walls were at their lowest and weakest. And from there, hell descended. The great trebuchets hurled stones weighing 100 to 200 kilograms, soaring through the sky before crashing into the walls with a force strong enough to shatter solid rock. Each strike sounded like thunder, shaking the earth beneath the defenders' feet. It wasn't just stone, fireballs were also launched, crashing onto wooden rooftops and igniting them into blazing infernos that spread across the city. Inside the walls, civilians and soldiers fought back desperately with boiling oil, burning resin, and a hail of crossbow bolts. Jerusalem became a hell of fire and stone, where it felt as though heaven and earth were collapsing with every strike. By September 29th, a large section of the wall finally gave way. Muslim troops surged forward, but were met with the frenzied resistance of the city's defenders. Hundreds fell in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Saladin could already see the outcome. Jerusalem would fall into his hands, but the price would be a toll in blood and lives so heavy it would scar even his mighty army. Defiance and desperation inside the walls, Balian of Ibelin knew the harsh truth. They could not hold out for many more days. But instead of surrendering to despair, he turned it into a weapon of last resort. Balian sent word to Saladin, "If the city falls, we will kill every Muslim prisoner, destroy all the holy relics, and reduce Jerusalem to ashes. And then you will claim only a graveyard, not a city." this was no empty threat. Within the walls were thousands of women and children, all prepared to die with Jerusalem. Imagine the sight, an entire city ready to burn itself to the ground, just to deny the enemy a complete victory. Saladin, despite commanding an army 4 to 5 times larger, suddenly faced a grim paradox. He could win, but the price would be a ruined city, tens of thousands of corpses, and the faith of the entire Muslim world tainted by rivers of blood. It was a psychological trap Balian had set, and it worked so well that Saladin was forced to stop. The fateful negotiation Saladin chose words over steel. He sat down at the negotiating table with Balian of Ibelin. The terms were laid out coldly, like a price list for human lives. 10 dinars for a man, 5 dinars for a woman, 1 dinar for a child. Those who could pay would be allowed to leave Jerusalem safely. But those with nothing but their bare hands would be sold into slavery. The numbers were staggering. Around 15,000 to 20,000 people managed to buy their freedom, while more than 10,000 others, whole families, even small children, were herded into slave caravans, dragging their fate across the desert. On October 2nd, 1187, Jerusalem officially opened its gates. There was no river of blood as in 1099, when the Crusaders massacred Muslims and Jews, yet the air was still heavy as stone. A holy city had changed hands, and the destiny of tens of thousands had been decided in just a few lines of negotiation. Meaning and consequences after the siege, Saladin emerged not only as the victor, but also as a dual symbol, the greatest enemy of the West, yet at the same time praised as the model of a true knight, one who could win without destroying. The fall of Jerusalem ignited the Third Crusade. From Europe, Richard I, Richard the Lion's Heart, prepared to march east, setting the stage for the legendary clash between two of the greatest figures of the Middle Ages. The contrast is haunting. In 1099, the Crusaders took Jerusalem in a river of blood, slaughtering 70,000 people in just a few days. In 1187, Saladin reclaimed the city through what could be called conditional mercy. Two conquests, two very different methods, yet both left scars that humanity would never forget. Jerusalem, a small city, yet powerful enough to shake the entire world. The lingering question, how could a city barely 1 square kilometer wide shake the entire world? How much blood was spilled? How many generations shattered? All in the name of faith. Jerusalem, where every stone tells a story, every wall stands as a witness, where humanity's memory is etched into the very blood that has soaked its soil. The siege of 1187 was not just a battle, it was a reminder. Wars fought in the name of faith always demand a price more terrible than any treasure mankind has ever dreamed of.